Hello?
Hello, Max.
Yeah, I'm all good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Welcome to the office hours.
Thanks for having me.
Um, yeah, so let's get right into it.
Yeah, so we're building a company called Windmill, which we're trying to help managers automate a lot of the kind of what we call chores that are traditionally associated with management. So there's two main things we're doing today. One is we help you collect peer feedback, so we see who's working together, and then we have a Slack agent that reaches out. I can share my screen quickly. If we go to it will reach out and basically say, hey, how's it been working with this other person about a specific work item? And then it has a little conversation, turns that into feedback, and then make sure that gets back to the person so that they know where they're strong or where there are areas to improve. Another thing we do is every week on Fridays, we reach out and have a little conversation about basically where'd you focus your attention this week. It already knows a lot of information about where the person is spending their time because we hook up to all the different productivity tools. But they can kind of go in and be like, hey, here's where I'm focused on. And then you can imagine for a manager, they can get a better sense of where people are spending their time, what they're focused on, are they focused on the right things without having to set up a ton of meetings and stuff like that. So overall, we're trying to make it a lot easier for managers to and automate a bunch of the stuff that is usually pretty time consuming. And increasingly, we're deploying these kind of via an agent that works with your team. So this we call it Windy. Windy will go out to everyone on your team and ask them questions or get feedback or stuff like that at different times of the day. And so we're going a lot deeper. We've been using LLMs for a variety of things, but increasingly we're going a lot deeper into these little chat conversations, primarily inside of Slack. And we're now at a scale where we've been kind of just eyeballing and improving prompts by hand, and that was working pretty well. But now the prompts are pretty good, and we need some more robust evaluations, specifically in the context of like a multi-turn chat conversation. And so we're currently looking at, we have some in-house tooling, which I can show you. And we're looking at some vendors, I don't know, like Human Loop and Langsmiths and those kind of people, and just would
Hmm.
love some guidance on like where you think we should be started. What are the right areas to focus on, specifically in this kind of multi-turn chat type of approach. So yeah, that's kind of some background.
Yeah. Um, so okay, like multi-turn chat is very open-ended.
Yep.
You could potentially evaluate infinite number of things.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of people get stuck at this phase when they're like, okay, where do I start with evals? Very understandable. Um, and so the counterintuitive thing is like one thing that's really good to do is to do an error analysis first.
Hmm.
And so what that means is you gather your data, like,
Hmm.
in whatever way that you collect it, in a way that you can read a lot of
Do you
examples
mind if I
fast.
record this? Sorry,
Yeah,
on
it
my
is
side.
being recorded on my side, but and I'm gonna
Will
post
you
it to
send?
YouTube.
Okay, cool.
Um, so essentially what's gonna happen is like you do an error analysis, and an error
Mhm.
analysis really is, and I can share my screen to
Cool.
give you kind of
Yeah,
just
super helpful.
some pointers.
Uh,
Let me one second.
how do am I still sharing?
I think it'll still let me
No.
share, so
Yeah, you
you
should.
won't
Cool.
you won't block me,
Cool,
so
cool,
no
cool.
worries. Um, is it? Can you see my screen?
Hold on. I cannot. Wait, what's going on? Zoom. What the heck? Oh, here we go. Here we go. No, I can. Oh, here. So my screen. Let me close out. Okay, cool.
Okay. So what you want to do is like you want to like perform an error analysis. So basically what you want to
Hmm.
do is like you want to look at your data. There's this video by Andrew Ng that kind of tells you what it is. It
Yep.
sounds a lot fancier than what it is. Basically what you do is like you look at a bunch of data and start seeing like kind of categorizing by hand like any errors that you see, just roughly.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
it's nothing fancy at all. It's like very like very manual. in a way.
Yeah, so we just did one of the things our users can do is basically saying like, hey, I don't have any feedback, which is usually a sign that like it wasn't a good question. Why'd you ask about this thing? And so we just went through that and did an analysis of all the different reasons why people essentially dismissed the chat.
Hmm.
Um, so it was kind of similar to ish. We didn't do every single
Great.
chat, but we did the ones where it was negative. And so we kind of have a good sense of like we have a bunch of examples that are not good, but we kind of as we it's kind of you get into that whack-a-mole game where you fix one and then other stuff gets worse, and it's just at the point where we need something more automated. So, but yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Keep
Yeah,
going.
no worries. Okay, so if
Yeah.
you already done, it seems like you've already done some error analysis, which is great.
Hmm.
So what you should do is like focus your tests on those
Yep.
errors.
Yep.
Um, there's a lot of ways to go about it. One is like, okay, if you can narrow down like the problem and kind of figure out like what's triggering it, like, oh, okay, when the user is asking about XYZ, it's always doing this, or it's always like giving like boilerplate answers or
Mhm.
something. I don't know. I'm just making it up.
Yep.
What you want to do is like start, crafting evaluations for that. Now it's a little bit of a like back and forth. It's not like there's no like linear workflow through this. So,
Yep.
okay, like first I just want to say like if you find something that's like obviously really wrong all the time, just go fix it.
Yep.
Don't
Yep.
get too don't get nerd sniped by evals
Yeah.
like in the extreme
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
So like after you've kind of solved like the really like obvious stuff, they're like, okay, let me just
Mhm.
go fix that right now. Because it's like whatever. Then you can start thinking about, okay, can you write tests for those? And like, okay, how do you write tests for something that's like multi-turn conversation? You don't like
Yep.
it's subjective, maybe.
Hmm.
Like you can't necessarily write an assertion for it. Like, and so that's when we get into LM as a judge,
Hmm.
potentially. And that's
Yep.
when you want
Okay.
to like sort of see if you can craft an LM as a judge that matches your opinion of things.
Yep.
Um, so that's what this blog post kind of walks you through in a way. I mean, this blog post is one attempt at describing a possible workflow through doing that. So
Yep.
don't like just take it with a grain of salt. But
Yep.
essentially, like what you want to do is you want to write down specific critiques of like what is going wrong. Like you drill into one of those
Yep.
categories of the error analysis. You write down
Yep.
like, okay, what went wrong? Like exactly. Once you have like 10 of those or so, you can try to see if you can go update, like craft a prompt for LM as a judge. And what you want to do is
Hmm.
you want to go back and forth and observe like the agreement between you and the LM as a judge until you
Hmm.
bring it into like a high amount of agreement. So
So you want
like
to
it's
basically
like a
prove that can yeah. So the first thing is to make sure that the LLM can match you as a judge, like a human judge.
yeah.
And like can we treat it? Can we teach it to make sure that it can evaluate? Okay, so like can we trust it as a judge is the first thing to try to figure out, and the way to, this makes sense. Okay, yep, I got it.
Yeah, yeah, that's the key part people miss. They're like they kind of just throw the LM as a judge, they write their prompt and then they go about their day. But then if you don't do the exercise where you try to align it with you and measure it,
Yeah,
then you can't ever trust it because you don't really
yep.
know if it's like
And
good or not.
how often do people run into issues where the LLM and judge is not good enough? Like generally, can you get it to work? Or I mean, maybe that's too vague of a question, but
Hmm. So the problem is, yeah, like this is a very interesting question. Every time I've done this exercise with people, LM as a judge, people change what they're looking for significantly because like the process of like doing it changes your mind about
yep,
what should be done. Like
yep,
like if you're gonna write critiques, it like forces you to like really think about it.
yep.
And every single time, 100% of the time, people are like, "Oh, you know what? Like actually it should be like something else." So
Is it just going through the process is sometimes enough to help improve things?
yes, yeah, yeah.
That's
It's
funny.
the joke. It's
Yeah,
like the inside joke amongst
yeah,
like ML or AI folks is like it's kind of like you go through this process, but it's really the process that actually ends up
Yeah.
benefiting you more so than even the LM as a judge.
Yep. Yep.
Because it's just forcing you, it's just like forcing you to look at the data very, very closely.
Yep.
Like in
And
a
it's much
systematic way.
easier. It's much easier. I mean, the prompt we have is like a little tricky where it's definitely easier to critique than to
Hmm.
actually write like the perfect, like give an a result, you can critique it, but but obviously the hard part is trying to write that. So okay, so this makes sense. All right. Okay. So let's say we do that and we have a judge that's working well.
And there's some
Um,
nuances in
yeah.
here, like
Yeah.
so like one is like, try to make binary decisions about if it's good or bad, and then like write a critique of why it's good or bad. Like try to distill it.
Yep.
Don't be wishy-washy like, oh, it was like kind of good here, but
Yeah.
it was kind of bad here, and maybe and blah blah. All that stuff is like, it's not actionable, and you're not going to go anywhere with that. You kind of have to draw some line in the sand, like, is this passable or not? Yes or no.
And
Um,
you want binary over like multi, like a, I don't know, 1 through 5 or something. Binary
yeah,
is better.
absolutely, 100%. Because if you get a 1 to 5 score, what are you going to do with that? Like, if you get a
Yeah.
3, like, what do you? That's not going to mean anything to you over a 4. You're going to be like, okay,
Yep.
like whatever.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
and basically, like when it comes to the prompt, um, what you want to do is like you want to put examples in the prompt as well. So like, there's some, exact like you want to put examples of your critiques in the
Yep.
judge. Because what you want
Yep.
to do is like you want to have your judge use chain of thought to do the
Hmm.
judging. And like your
Yep.
critiques that you wrote are your chain of thought. So you want to
Yep.
train
Yep.
it to think like you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. We're
Um,
doing this in like all of our prompts now. Pretty,
okay.
it's very similar pattern. It's pretty effective. So this makes a ton of sense.
Um, so yeah, okay. So that's kind of like how you can start thinking about this like this eval for
Yep.
that case.
Yep. And then in terms of, okay, so we have that eval. What about in terms of like maybe you're saying don't worry about this for now, but like in terms of like the tooling and the infrastructure to be able to, we're basically trying to decide around building stuff in-house versus like moving like right now all the prompts are in the code base and all version of the code base, that kind of setup. And there's obviously a lot of vendors that promise good stuff if you move the prompts to their system and use their evals and logs and observability and et cetera. And those are definitely problems we're facing. But we have a question around like, do we continue to build stuff ourselves? Do we try to use some sort of like an open source eval framework that we kind of just plug into our
Tell me a little bit about your
stuff?
tech stack. Are you Python, TypeScript? What kind of are you have like machine learning engine, like data science type people, more developer type? Just give me a little bit like a little
Yeah, just
background.
a few full stack engineers, all TypeScript, a
Okay.
small team. Not really trying to solve the problem where we have like different people doing the prompting versus doing the actual like engineering stuff. More just like we're struggling with
And
observability a little bit.
are you
So
using
yeah.
any frameworks internally, like LangChain or something? Okay.
No. So we call that we have our own like home built wrapper around, so we can easily like swap out Claude and OpenAI and most of the stuff we're using Sonnet 35 for. And so we have a little bit of logging and tooling that we built in house, but pretty much just making the API calls directly, pretty raw.
Okay. Are you using anything already? Are you
We're not,
just
no.
shopping at the moment? Okay.
We're looking at some different vendors, and I don't know if it's yeah we need to figure we need to get better at this, because we're, as I mentioned, like we're hitting the wall of. So it's not like I think the setup I want to start to have is where we have a nice eval system, and then when we're doing prompt engineering, we can kind of quickly iterate on prompts and see how those are changing. And then also there's some sort of probably like always running thing that's looking at logs and doing some evals, and then maybe some CI/CD like system that kind of like runs before deploying, also running some like evals. So something, I mean, that's like high level,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
some stuff like
So
that, and we're trying to figure out
yeah.
infrastructure.
Okay. So and are you okay with paying for tools? Or
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
we're okay, Bang.
So the ones that you mentioned are all very decent. They all do those
Yeah.
things. So like my favorite vendors so far, Human Loop is really good as well. Um,
Mm.
so I guess for you, since you're like a TypeScript shop and you're like mostly full stack developers, um, like brain trust is worth looking at. I don't know if
Brain trust. Okay.
yeah. So
No, we
definitely,
haven't. That's,
yeah, definitely take a look at them. Take a look at Human Loop.
is brain
Um,
trust your favorite, you would say?
I like them a lot. They're they're pretty good. Yeah. It's
Okay.
hard to like have a favorite,
Yeah.
honestly. There's like different things like for different purposes, like or they're kind of like people different good at different things, but like it's definitely you should definitely take a look at both of them, get a feel for like
Yep.
what you think resonates with you the most. Um,
Yep.
that's the one I would add to the mix for
Okay.
you.
We looked at Langfuse, Langsmith.
Yeah.
So a lot of brain trust.
Yeah,
And do you
Langsmith
think, yeah,
is cool. I mean, I really like Harrison. So like their team has
yeah,
amazing support. Like they're all
yeah,
over it.
yep.
But just to add brain trust to the mix and kind of
Okay.
choose.
And with the people you've worked with, the people who have made the jump, I'm guessing there have been people in our scenario where they're kind of some half-baked internal tools, and then they're like, hey, let's use a vendor. Like, is that usually a good, I mean, I've in my
Yeah.
experience, you
Yeah,
use
yeah.
tons of vendors
Okay.
and you end up
So
totally
yeah, yeah,
regretting it.
like for eval stuff, you want to use a
Yeah.
vendor. For a lot
Okay.
of other stuff, I don't think you should like I'm not a fan of frameworks that much
Yep.
of
I
like,
agree.
LLM frameworks or like orchestrator type stuff. But evals is
Yep.
things like, I don't know, it's kind of like observability and stuff like that. You don't want to be building that,
Yep. Yep.
That's probably
Yep.
really far away from your core thing.
Definitely is. Yep.
And so it's kind of like, yeah, I recommend just using
And with
tools for that.
like, so I don't know how related LangChain and LangSmith are. I didn't have a great experience with LangChain. Is LangSmith like, even if you're not using LangChain, that's still worth looking
You
at,
can
or
use it. You can use it
yeah,
with Lang without any Lang
yep,
chain, Lang graph stuff is totally 100% compatible. I would say like it's kind of the reverse is true. If you are really bought into LangChain, then just use Langsmith because
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
the
We're
integration is
not
going to
there,
be
so
like best in class. So like, but if you're not,
yep,
then it's kind of like maybe it's worth like getting a look at
yep,
like maybe
yeah.
these
We're
three
looking at
that
all
you
of them.
pointed out.
Yep.
Just
Okay.
because like also they keep changing and they're like kind of
Yeah.
so just and you'll like one more than the others
And do you have
probably.
an opinion on where to store prompts? Because they all want you to store prompts in their framework and version them there, or at least the ones we've looked at, and use their prompt templating system, which obviously I understand how it can make all the tooling they have a lot better because they have the template itself. Do
You
you
don't
have
have
opinions
to.
about that?
Like you don't have to. I know like I was looking at LangFuse the other day and they have like a prompt
Yeah.
management system and versioning and stuff.
Yep.
Um, I would say it's up to you. There's some drawbacks to having your prompt in a separate thing that is not
Yep.
a part of your code base.
Yep.
And you need to reason about how you feel about that. Like, do you need
Hmm.
lots of non-developers iterating on your prompts? Maybe the
No.
answer is no. And then if the answer is
No.
no, maybe just leave it in your code base. Because
Yep.
once you have something outside your code base, then you have to deal with then you have a shit, you know how it is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you
Yep.
basically are having some code outside your code base in a way. Uh,
Yep. 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 Okay.
so
That all makes sense. And do you see most people versioning their prompts alongside their just like general code versioning, or are they having like a whole separate scheme where you're kind of storing multiple versions of the prompts and using some sort of a system to kind of like, I don't know, roll stuff out?
some people are some people are versioning it like separately, especially people that have like domain experts and non-developers, like they need to
Yeah.
iterate on it. I will say that like when you get okay, like a lot of times your prompts don't live in a silo. So like
Mhm.
they need access to
Yeah,
application
not at
code.
all. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
They
all
need to
they're all
like
built
query a
together.
database, they need to do
Yep.
something. And so it can be a little bit difficult to house the prompt like to test the prompts outside your code
Hmm.
base.
Yep.
And you kind of have to like design a data set that can like be templated in. And we like,
Yep.
it's get a little bit tricky. So there's a trade-off there, but
Yep.
yeah, you have to think through that.
Okay. All right. All super helpful. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, if this was helpful for you, please I'll send you an email with like a feedback. Just let me know how
Awesome. Awesome.
it could be more helpful.
No, it's super helpful. I appreciate you taking the time. Just make sure I didn't share anything sensitive for your post.
Yeah, if
That would be
there
my
is, let
recommendation.
me know.
Yeah, I don't
And
know. I don't know exactly what I guess if the I showed you Slack, so I don't know what was in there. So,
okay, I can edit that bit out.
or if it's yeah, I mean, if it's just I don't know. If I can see it before, I can tell you. It's probably
Okay,
fine. It's
I
just
can just send you the video,
yeah, just send me the
and
video. I'll
like
let you know.
privately, and then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can let me know. Okay.
Perfect. Sweet. Great
All
talking.
right. Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, Mal. Bye.